If you're a small business owner looking to grow or expand your business, check out On Deck Business Loans. On Deck offers business loans online from $5,000 to $500,000, and their simple application process only takes 10 minutes. Unlike banks, they'll give you a decision quickly, and funding is as fast as one day. Get a free consultation with an On Deck loan advisor. Visit ondeck.com/podcast.
This is the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. Boundaries or burnout, you make the choice. Here's your host, Michael Levitt. Welcome to another episode of the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. Michael here, and I've got Nancy Waring, Fitness at Work MD. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. How are you today?
I am awesome, and I'm glad that you're here, and I know this is something we've been wanting to talk about for a while. And even in the pre-show conversation, you'd mentioned something about genomics and DNA, and when we start talking about how so many of us, especially if we're driven type A personalities and we're constantly on the go and doing things, we forget to take care of this vessel that we call our human body to the point where we neglect it. And what happens is it creates all kinds of problems. So I'd love to hear your take on what you're seeing in the world over your career and today, and some things that people should really start paying more attention to.
I will try to answer all of those, Michael. As I had shared with you, I was a speech pathologist for years, and I worked with a lot of adults who between their mid-40s to their mid-60s ended up suffering from having a stroke. And many of them had massive strokes, and these were individuals who may be very high-powered. A lot of stress in their lives, were really trying to take care of making sure that they were building their empire, making money, taking care of everybody else. But what they weren't doing was taking care of themselves. So that ended up being long hours of work with stress, lack of sleep, not eating properly, and sitting down for a number of hours. I mean, the average American can sit anywhere from 7 to 11 hours a day. And all of that ends up creating challenges with our body. And we'll see it in possibly becoming pre-diabetic or diabetes, high blood pressure, and a whole host of other problems because of our lifestyle, because we're not taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, as a society, I think we're less active than we've ever been, with the advent of the cars and television. We tend to be more stationary. And of course, computers and even with our smartphones, where we can pretty much be anywhere. Oftentimes we are, sitting down when we're using them, and
right.
And that 7 to 11 hours a day. You figure if you get 8 hours of sleep, which hopefully everyone is aiming for, that leaves 16 hours. So 11 hours of those days, you're sitting down. That means there's 5 hours throughout that whole time where you're not sitting down, but it might be a case of you're getting up to go to the refrigerator or going to the bathroom or going to and from your car or going to grab your brown bag lunch or whatever the case may be. And,
right.
And amazingly, we're seeing skyrocketing numbers in type 2 diabetes. I wonder why.
Right. And they actually estimate that 90% of the individuals who are pre-diabetic have no clue. So that's why it's really important to get your yearly physicals and have your blood work taken by your doctors, because if you are pre-diabetic, you can reverse that with taking positive steps in your lifestyle from movement and nutrition.
Yeah, it's something I personally did, after my cardiac event from a decade ago. Is I made some significant changes, and a stat that I tend to hear about quite a bit in the dozen or so years that I was in the healthcare sector was roughly 10 to 20% of patients will actually follow the orders that are given to them by their medical provider. which means 80 to 90% of people don't. And for me, it was like, okay, yeah, I don't want to have another cardiac event ever. So what do I need to do to prevent that? Well, eat healthier, become more active. I know that's going to be a shock to people to hear that's the ingredients, but that's what they are. So over time, I started eating healthier and became more active, and I've lost the weight. I am at basically my high school weight, and at high school, I didn't weigh a ton. So it's still kind of, I wish I had my high school energy and my high school appearance, but I don't, because that's a few decades ago, and life and all kinds of other circumstances do it. But you know what? I wouldn't want to look like how I did when I was in high school, because these war wounds and marks are evidence that I've given life a really good run for its money so far. So I like who I am, where I am right now, so it works out. But again, I'm deeply concerned. When I'm based in Toronto, and while it's an active city, I am seeing and noticing, quite an increase in the diabetic population, and it's very concerning to me, because I know again, being in the healthcare sector for as long as I was, I know what the complications are, and I know if untreated and not managed well, what eventually could happen. And I don't want that for people, and it's all in their control. It's not like this thing where they can't control it. It is. You can control it.
Well, I find that with diabetes, a lot of individuals say, well, my mom or my dad or my brother or my aunt had diabetes. They don't take it seriously what diabetes really means to you in your body and your longevity and your energy. As a speech pathologist, I worked with individuals who had limbs amputated because of diabetes. It is something to take very, very, very seriously.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What I find gets very complicated, challenging, is that we are bombarded by information and an overload of information. It's very popular, intermittent fasting. You can have the Mediterranean diet, and people are going, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do anymore. And you can go to McDonald's and, okay, I can have a salad there, and thinking that that's all right. And I find that people are very confused. So that's why I actually started to get into the genomic or the DNA space, because it provides a place to start to talk about how you are uniquely different. We're mainly the same. We're like 99 to 99.5% of the same, but it's that 0.5% or 1% that really is what makes us different. So what might be the best form of exercise or nutrition for you, Michael, might be different than what's best for my body.
Agreed. And even with dietary choices of the foods that you eat, there are certain foods that I find provide me energy, and I feel good after eating them. And of course, there are certain foods that don't agree with me, and I'm aware of it, and that's one of the things I highly recommend people do. I'm a big fan of journaling, documenting what your days are like and what's going on in your life, just so you can have an exercise of processing it. But more importantly, you can go back and look at it, and you can jot down, okay, how did I feel today? Did I have any aches, any pains, any discomfort? Whether it was stomach wasn't feel good, I was a little lethargic. You can look back, and if you're tracking what you're eating, you can align those things and go, okay, it seems like every time that I consume this, then I feel this. And then that's when, you can, do a deeper dive and figure out, okay, do you have some type of intolerance, or is it the way that is prepared? Who knows what it could be, and I agree with you, with the genomics and the DNA side of things. Like you said, there's certain exercises where I could do exercises and I could, follow all the routines and not make a dent in anything, where somebody next to me that looks to be a similar build could do the same exercises and 90 days later look like they're ready to join the UFC, and here we go. And I'm like, what's going on? And from that standpoint, it's just, there's just certain, our bodies, while are very similar, are very different, and getting to those things can help you really figure out your custom designed way of living, from an exercise standpoint, from a nutrition standpoint, even down to the point of, when is the optimum time for you to go to sleep and the optimum time for you to get up. Everybody follows this pattern of, okay, I got to go to bed by this time and get up at this time. Well, figure out what your natural body rhythms are. And if you're in alignment with that, guess what? Your body won't necessarily need that alarm clock.
Right. Well, it's your circadian rhythm. And I believe there's a book that I haven't read it called The Circadian Code that I've heard is excellent. But understanding really your own body will do just a wealth of, I don't even know how I'm going to say it, how it can really transform how you're feeling if you start with what's natural to you.
Yeah, that's something
just like the idea that our productivity during the day is reduced based on research, between 2 and 4. And part of that is probably some of what we eat at lunch, but the other part is just how our body rhythm is. And that's very solid.
Yeah, and understand how you flow. And that's an exercise that I do with people, is when they're trying to figure out, why they're burning out or why they're stressed out, I tell them, okay, we need to document how you're spending your time. And they aren't happy that I asked them to do that. And then I remind them that I used to be an accountant and I had to bill per every 15 minutes. I actually worked for a firm where we billed every 12 minutes. You're like, why would you bill every 12 minutes? You can bill more if you do it that way. So it was just, they made more money by doing that, from switching to billing every 15 minutes to every 12 minminutes. There was like a fifth increment that they could bill every hour. They adjusted the rates accordingly, and next thing you know, they're doing quite well. But so keep track of your time and how you're spending it, and also what your energy levels are. And again, you can notice rhythms. Like I did the exercise for myself, and I find for me that I'm better to work on tasks and creativity type of things and projects and whatnot in the morning, usually after lunch. And at first I blamed it on just eating, too many saturated foods and garbage. But I'm like, no, I'm going to eat a healthy lunch. And I eat the healthy lunch, and that didn't really impact my productivity when it came to wanting to work on those things. Even from an emotional standpoint, I'm like, I don't want to do this. It's kind of like, the 6-year-old. It's like, okay, it's time to go to bed. I don't want to go to bed. Well, I didn't want to work on those things either. But if you ask me to do it in the morning, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I just, nose to the grind, do some deep work and get it done. So I recognize that for me. So, my mornings, I tend to do that. Afternoons, I tend to be more of the conversations, or maybe not so much creativity, but just, reflecting and looking at different things and skimming some things and making notes for the next day or whatever I need to do. And I find that by doing that, for me, and again, everyone's different, for me, it helps shape my days in such a way where I can stop working at a certain time and then ease into my late afternoon and early evening routines of, either cooking dinner, or if you're going out to dinner, or whatever you're doing, and
Right.
and unwinding, and then go to bed, wash, rinse, repeat. And it helps for me anyway to mitigate any stress, and it keeps me energized, and I know, okay, in the morning I'm going to be working on these things, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm, obviously I use, mindfulness techniques and things like that to help me fall asleep, because one of the challenges that I personally have is I get excited about the things I'll be working on tomorrow. And I'm like, I need to go to bed so I can get rest, so I have the energy to actually do those things. But you start thinking about them, and your brain's going, okay, well, I'm going to do this and this and this. And it's like, okay, brain, I need you to kind of just hit the
Turn
off
off.
switch for a little bit. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, it sounds like you've developed like habits or behaviors that you do every day because you have found that you're very successful. And that's going to be the key to any type of lifestyle change, is to get it to the point it becomes a habit, because it's not fun necessarily, but it's going to work for you, and then it'll just reinforce itself over time, because people tend to give up after a few weeks or a few months if whatever their goal is isn't being met, or if they get distracted by something else.
yeah, the habits are a big
Great what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, and it wasn't something, and I want to make this perfectly clear for everybody listening. It wasn't something that I developed overnight. This was let's peel back the layers, figure out who I am, figure out what I was doing that led up to my burnout and everything else that transpired. And then go, okay, I don't want to go through that again. What do I need to do? But a lot of people just jump to okay, what do I need to do? But for me, I had to first go back and go, okay, why did I choose to do the things that I did? Get that first, and get the backstory, and figure out, okay, why did I choose to eat that way? Why did I choose to work long hours? Why did I choose to not sleep when I should be sleeping? Figure all those things out in a non-judgmental way. This is just a fact-finding mission of yourself. And oftentimes, I would ask, people that were close to me, it's like, okay, what was your understanding behind this? And would get some good insights. And from there, it's like, okay, let's start developing some habits to change these things and be more in tune with your body, and what makes it tick better than others, and understanding, okay, and there's always going to be those situations and those days where you may have to work longer hours. There may be a situation where you're on a flight and it gets delayed and you're up later than you normally are.
Right.
Life happens, and the key thing is, to have mechanisms in place where you can recover from that, and figure out what those things are to help you recover from those things. So when you're working with people, and you're talking, about, their DNA makeup and all of that, what are some, common questions that people ask you? Because I'm sure that they are not overly in tune with, they probably have an understanding of what DNA is, and I'm hoping more from, a science background, and not from a watching Maury Povich background, but just something, and nothing against Maury. If Maury, you want to sponsor my show, I'll be happy to take your money. But why, why our DNA is such an important part of designing our ideal life.
I find it's great from a starting point. I like to make people feel positive about themselves. And so often people do not trust sort of their intuition or their instincts. And often when they get their DNA results, whether it's the best type of diet for them or the best form of exercise, they usually know at some level. I'll give you an example. When it comes to fitness, the basic areas that are looked at: are you more of a power or an endurance type of an athlete? Your genes. So are you Are you going to be that bodybuilder who's going to do that 1 rep max, or that sprinter? Are you that person who needs to do a lot of multiple repetitions, or you're that long distance runner? Most people have some of both genes, but there are individuals who are all endurance and some who are all power. And recognizing that can really help to develop a more optimal type of a workout program if that's what somebody's looking for. And I have somebody who I recently assessed, and he was 80% power. And I said to him, before I reviewed everything, I said, "You don't like running, do you?" He's like, "No, I hate running." And then I said, you probably like dealing with heavier weights or things where it's just very powerful and very explosive. He said, "How do you know?" I said, this is in your genes." And he happens to be a rugby player, which was perfect. And then we laughed about it. But really looking at that, and again, for that person who isn't self-aware and now they want to get into better shape, they want to feel stronger, it just provides a starting point. Also, understanding recovery time is very, very important, because when you start or you're engaged in an exercise program, particularly if you're pushing yourself, you're going to have inflammation. It's just part of the process. And if you don't allow your body to recover adequately, it increases your chance of re-injuring yourself. And then if you hurt yourself, what are you going to do? You're not going to work out, or you're going to do less reps, and you're going to do less time walking or running or whatever that is, whatever that exercise is for you. So it's important to know, as well as whether you're prone to having ligament or tendon type of injuries. So my own DNA, I was an avid runner. I ran marathons, and here I am in my 50s thinking nothing's going to stop me. I was running races at least once a week. I was doing CrossFit 3 to 4 days a week. I was running 2 miles to get to CrossFit, and then 2 miles home, and then maybe racing that night. I ran my fastest half marathon in 1 hour and 50 minutes, which was pretty quick. And my body's one just said that day, "Nancy, you can't keep this up." I had a beer. I went to jog to my car. One leg moved, the other one didn't. And I fell and I tore my labrum. It's part of my hip, which has derailed me. This was before DNA, but when I look at my DNA, it shows that I've got what's called a high VO2 max. So it makes sense, and I had more endurance genes. So it made sense that I was able to develop quickly into a decent runner. It also showed that because of inflammation, I really need time. I need 48 hours between an intense workout. So the idea that I could run a marathon and then the next day I might go for a jog or even do the CrossFit was not the most optimal for my body. And it ended up giving out on me, which curtailed really how much I run to this day. And I often joke around that if I knew all of this beforehand, I would still be running marathons. And I probably can. I'm probably a little scared now, but that was sort of the power of the DNA, because then it explained why I had the problem that I ended up having. So now I just create my programs based on my profile. The nutrition part, or the diet part of what I use, really looks at optimizing your diet based on whether it's more Mediterranean, low carbohydrates, and low fat. It was okay, Michael, I'm just going to tell you a quick story about a man. I was reviewing his results the other day, and we were in a networking group, and I saw what he ate. He had a hamburger and French fries. His DNA was such that he's the most sensitive to carbohydrates that I have ever seen based on this testing. But right after a meeting, we went and I reviewed all of this, and he's getting tired. He's yawning. He's like, "I'm sorry." I said, "Your DNA is telling me what's going on here in terms of thinking about that sensitivity to the carbohydrates that he had, and his blood glucose going up." And now I said, "You are crashing." He also said, "I knew you were going to talk about what I was eating." And we laughed because I do know him, but I said, this is where the power of understanding, some people could maybe eat this. But for you, you really need to stay away from a lot of those breads, those complex carbohydrates and the sugars and things like that. And he's also pre-diabetic. And I said, this is, you really have to reduce this so that we can work on getting those numbers lower. And he's going to be going to the doctor in a few months. I said, let's work on getting those numbers just through the diet. So I looked at that, but even more important to me and what I've learned is that we've been a very calorie-based society right now and weight loss based. Remember years ago, it was whether you have 2,000 calories in a donut or 2,000 calories in celery. It didn't make any difference, which is silly. It really is, because the foods that we eat are really what's broken down in our gut, and it fuels our cells in our body and our brain. So it's very important that we get the vitamins and minerals and all these nutrients into our body. So the DNA test can also look at how you are with the optimization of whether it's your antioxidants, things that reduce that inflammation, the A, the E, the C, as well as omega-3s, which are very important. We think of that when everybody tells us we need to eat our fish, our salmon, and our B vitamins for energy. So if we have an idea of whether we're more predisposed towards optimal absorption or not, that just gives us a little bit more information. And myself, I need extra antioxidants. So here I am at high risk. I need recovery. I'm at high risk of having injury to tendons, and I need extra antioxidants. So that was another whammy just for me.
All that is amazing, and there's so much information that we have within ourselves that if people tapped into it, they would be able to, live better and have a healthier, better life for them, just based on designing what they do, how they exercise, and what they eat.
Right, for themselves. Yeah.
Exactly. So Nancy, where can people find out more about you and get in touch with you to learn more about this work and what you're doing? Because I think it would be beneficial for everybody to get to know more about it and really fine tune their life, based to optimize what their body is designed as.
Well, I have a website, and that's www.fitnessworkmd.com. Just as I shared with you, Michael, I'm revamping it to include a lot more of the DNA and genomic information, but by next week, the 1st of April at the latest, it's going to be up again. I'm also on Instagram at Fitness at Work, and I do have a Facebook page as well, Fitness at Work. My email address is nancy@fitnessatworkmd.com. And should I give my phone number, Michael?
No, that's okay, because you never know who listens to these things.
Yeah, that's why I was
But no, that's fine. I mean, with all the other stuff, and plus half the generation doesn't even use the phone icon on their phone anymore. It's all texting and everything else. So no, but thank you.
And chat bots.
Exactly. So audience, I'll have all of those links in the show notes on that. So Nancy, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate you. Great to connect with you again, and really exciting to hear about the awesome work that you're doing and how it's going to be impacting lives to live better lives because they're in tune with what their bodies are actually asking for.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Michael.
I appreciate
You're doing great work out there. Keep sharing your message.
Thank you so much. Until next time, everybody, be well. Hey, it's Michael again. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. If you're like many people, you're dealing with some significant stress and possibly approaching burnout. I know how you feel. In 2009, my burnout led to a year of worst-case scenarios. I do not want that to happen to you. If you go to breakfastleadership.com, you can register for a free webinar on burnout prevention, as well as get a free checklist to have successful mornings. Start off each day the right way. Again, that's at breakfastleadership.com. Also, since you are a loyal podcast listener, I'm asking you to like, rate, and review my podcast on iTunes. I look at all the reviews and appreciate your comments, and it helps other potential listeners discover the content I have on the show. I appreciate you, and thanks again for listening.